And welcome back to the third episode now, I believe, of the White Belt Podcast. What's today's date? Today is November 2nd. It's Friday, just a little after 3 p.m. I just got done with some school stuff, doing some stuff for school and relaxing. I have taken some time off the podcast, which I apologize for. Really, no specific reason, but I have been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes to try to upgrade the podcast, make it better for you guys. And as you guys can tell, if you can't tell, I have a second mic now, and so now I'm going to be trying to have guests on. I've been working on that pretty hard the past couple of weeks. I have like 2 people in mind, maybe 3 that I want to get on. I've been working on that. I have a buddy of mine I went to high school with that he streams full-time now on Twitch. He does like video game stuff like that, Call of Duty, I think, Fortnite, stuff like that. I'm going to try to get him on the podcast. I feel like that'd be pretty cool. Him and I are pretty good friends. But yeah, I've been working on that. I got a second mic now for the podcast, which I mentioned. The shot, as you can tell, is a little bit farther back. But when I do have people on, the angle is going to be changed up. I think the way this is going to be set up is going to be a little different. For those of you watching on YouTube, the people listening on iTunes have no idea what I'm talking about. But by the way, we are now on iTunes. It took me forever to figure out how to get on iTunes, and I finally got it on iTunes. So if you guys want to go ahead and check out the White Belt Podcast on iTunes or on the podcast thing on the iTunes store, just type in the White Belt Podcast. It should be one of the first things that pop up. At least that's what happens when I search it. I don't know if it's because I have it downloaded or whatever, but it should be one of the first things that pop up. It's just the White Belt Podcast with our little logo, the White Belt, and it just says White Belt Podcast. Also, I made a Instagram account for the podcast, basically where I just post updates, stuff like that. I haven't really been posting too much. I have like 3 or 4 posts on there. I'm going to try to be more frequent on that. I made an Instagram account, so go ahead and follow that. It's just at White Belt Podcast, just at White Belt Podcast. I'm going to try to, actually, I'll link all that in the description of this YouTube video. And for those of you listening on iTunes, I do have a YouTube channel where I post these. So if you guys want to actually see me talking, or when I have guests on here, you guys want to actually watch the conversation, I don't know, sometimes people like to do that. I'm that way, like with watching podcasts like Joe Rogan, for example. If he has people on there, which he normally does most of his podcasts, he has people on there. I like to watch it. I just feel like it's easier to follow the conversation and get engaged into the conversation if I'm watching it. I don't know. That's just how I am. But yeah, if you guys are listening on iTunes, you guys can check out the White Belt Podcast on YouTube. I believe it's just the White Belt Podcast on YouTube. But yeah, I'm going to link everything in the YouTube video down below for the iTunes and the Instagram and everything like that. And then for those of you listening, you guys are just going to have to search it because I can't link anything. At least not that I know of. But yeah, there's been a lot of news that's happened in the MMA world since I did my last podcast. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys saw it's a little late now because UFC 230 is tomorrow. But obviously the Nate Diaz, Dustin Poirier fights off. Chris Weidman, Luke Rockhold is off. Luke Rockhold got injured, and Dustin Poirier got injured as well. So Chris Weidman will be fighting Jacare Souza. And I don't think, Nate Diaz is not fighting. I know that for a fact. But also, I'm sure a lot of you guys saw a lot of the stuff going on with Khabib, him and Floyd Mayweather going back and forth about possibly fighting. Do I see that happening? If it does happen, it would have to be a boxing match. Even though Khabib would probably get killed in a boxing match, I mean, it'd be the same way for Floyd if he were to go into MMA, because there's no way you can train for, like, even if he's been training for ever since he's talked about going to MMA for like the past year and a half, there's no way you can gather that much information and skills in a year and a half to be able to compete in the UFC with the best of the best, top tier fighters in the world. There's just no way. So it'd have to be a boxing match, and I really don't see Khabib doing that unless he's trying to do it for the money, because that would be a huge money fight. Which I don't see Khabib being like I don't see him as like a money fighter type person. But you never know. It could happen. Maybe he's just doing it for publicity. Because obviously he'd lose that fight unless something crazy were to happen. He would lose that boxing. He would lose a boxing match to Floyd Mayweather 10 times out of 10. But they've been going back and forth ever. I'm sure you guys have all heard that and seen it all over the internet because they've been going back and forth about it. I did hear though that Dana White reportedly met with Floyd Mayweather's team recently, so that could, I mean, even though there's like, it's really unlikely that this actually happens, that kind of does add some traction to the whole story. So maybe there is something there, but like I said, I really, really don't see this happening. It's just not the only way it's good for Khabib is for money. That's the only reason it's good. And Floyd really doesn't need money because he's got plenty of money, but he's probably just doing it for more money because it's an easy win. But yeah, I really don't see that happening. I'm sure also a lot of you guys saw the Chael and Fedor fight. Obviously, Fedor beat Chael, and now he'll be fighting Ryan Bader in January, I believe. Now, who do I think is gonna win? I honestly don't know. Ryan Bader is the light heavyweight champ over at Bellator, so it'd be cool to see him beat Fedor and win the Grand Prix, so he could be a double champ. That'd be cool. But I really don't know who I think is going to win, in all honesty. I think it's really a toss-up. I think if Ryan Bader's not careful, he's definitely going to get caught by Fedor. But if he's very cautious, and I don't mean cautious in like to the point where he's scared to do anything, but like just conscious of like what Fedor is capable of. Sorry, I can't really talk today. If he's just conscious of his abilities and he respects them, while still moving forward with his game or whatever, if that makes sense, while still implementing his strategy and his fight strategy or whatever, I believe that Ryan Bader could win. But like I said, it's a toss-up. I really don't know who's going to win. We'll just have to see. I feel like that fight could go either way. But, yeah, that's pretty much it for news that kind of bridges us between the last podcast and this podcast. It's probably been like a week and a half, I think. I'm not, like I said, I apologize for that, and I'm going to try to be more consistent. I want to work on at least one podcast a week, and eventually, if I can fit more in, obviously, do it as much as I possibly can. And like I said, I'm trying to work to get people on here. If you guys have any ideas or suggestions of people you guys want to see on here, if you guys have any questions that you want me to answer or anything like that, or if you guys have any recommendations for stuff I can do to improve the stream to make it better, the stream, I mean the podcast, but I guess the stream because this is on YouTube. I do live stream this, so when I am live on YouTube, this is a live stream completely of the podcast. It's raw, uncut. The whole podcast is raw, uncut. There's nothing edited about it. It's completely uncut. So if you guys have any ideas or suggestions what I can do to make this better for you guys, better quality, please let me know in the comments and the YouTube video. But we do have UFC 230 coming up tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and pull up that fight card, actually. Obviously, the main event is Jarrah Lewis and Daniel Cormier. You have Jacare Souza and Chris Weidman, Israel Adesanya, and Derek Brunson. All right, I have the card pulled up here. I'm just going to go over the main card, honestly, because I don't know like a whole lot of people on the prelims. I did see though that the Jarrah Eubanks, whoever was supposed to fight Valentina Shevchenko in the main event for 230, which really wasn't official and it kind of got called off. I really don't know what the deal was with that. But I did see that she missed weight. They're fighting at flyweight, which is 125, and she missed weight by like 2.5 pounds or something like that, which is pretty bad. And given the fact that she was pretty upset, first of all, over the fact that she didn't get her title shot, which Ben Askren made a good point. He tweeted something today, and it was like, with a record of 3-2, you complain about not getting a main event slot at Madison Square Garden, which is immature, and then not making weight by 2.5 pounds. That's really not good, obviously, if you're trying to make a case for a title fight. But I don't know. This is just what I've seen on the internet. This is what Ben Askren said. He said it was pretty immature of her. He said she needs to grow up and start being a pro, which I believe he does have a point there. You can't really, especially if you want to be the main event at Madison Square Garden, you can't really. First of all, you can't miss weight, and you can't really be 3-2. And in all honesty, I've never even heard of her. I've never heard of this fighter up until it was announced that she was fighting, or supposedly announced that she was fighting Valentina Shevchenko. Joe Rogan said the same thing. He's never even heard of her, and she said she felt disrespected. Which I don't know if Joe actually knows her or not. I don't know. I don't know her, but I don't understand how you can. I don't want to sound like mean or disrespectful when I say this. I don't want to be disrespectful in any way, but like when you're really not that big, or like a lot of people don't know who you are, there's really like no way that you're going to be the main event at Madison Square Garden for a UFC card. There's just no way. I think the Derek Lewis and DC fight's good. Obviously Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier would have been good, but the Luke Rockhold and Chris Weidman fight, that would have been great. Even though Jacare and Chris Weidman's pretty good, and you still have Israel Adesanya and Derek Brunson on there, which that's going to be a good fight. And then you have David Branch and Jared Cannonier. That's going to be a good fight. So I think that the card is still going to be pretty good, but it definitely did take some blows, obviously, when Luke Rockhold, Nate Diaz, and Dustin Poirier all basically got dropped from the card. Or not dropped. They got pulled off due to injuries and stuff like that, which sucks, but it's still going to be a good card. But in terms of fight predictions for this weekend, starting off with the Brunson Adesanya fight, I'm gonna go with Izzy on this. I don't know by what method. I don't know. I'm gonna say decision. But it could be a knockout. You never know. With Derek Brunson, Israel Adesanya, either way it could be a knockout. But I'm gonna go with Adesanya on this one. For Roberson and Marshman, I really don't know. I'm probably gonna go with Marshman on this. I've really never watched either fighters compete. I do know a little bit about both of them, but I'm gonna probably go with Marshman. David Branch, I'm gonna pick David Branch over Jared Cannonier. I think him and Jacare Souza would have been a great fight. But I'm gonna pick David Branch now. I would have picked Jacare over Branch, but I'm gonna pick David Branch now. And then for Chris Weidman and Jacare, that is tough. I really, really don't know who to pick. I don't know. I really don't know. I want to go with Chris Weidman because I like Chris Weidman. Obviously, after he lost his title, he went on that 3-fight losing streak. He lost to Luke Rockhold. Then he lost to, who did he lose to? I don't know. I'm gonna have to look that up. Chris Weidman, he went on a 3-fight losing streak. I do know that. He lost to, it was either, I think it was Lyoto maybe. He lost to Lyoto, Luke Rockhold, and I got to find out the third person. This is going to bother me. I know it. Luke Rockhold, it wasn't, my bad. It wasn't Lyoto. He beat Lyoto. Luke Rockhold, Yoel Romero, and Gegard Mousasi, which Yoel and Gegard completely understand. Both very elite fighters. Obviously, Gegard is a monster over at Bellator now, and Yoel Romero is a monster still. He, in my opinion, he won that Robert Whittaker fight, that second fight back in, when was that? Was that June or July? I don't remember. I think it was July. I believe he won that fight. I believe that Yoel won that fight, and I still believe that Yoel is, I think he's one of the best, if not the best, middleweight fighter. But I'm pretty sure he's moving up to light heavyweight now, which will be interesting. Because now you have John Jones coming back, Alexander Gustafsson. I want to say coming back because he hasn't fought in like a year and a half, almost 2 years. So, and then obviously Anthony Smith coming off that win over Volkan Ozdemir. The light heavyweight division is kind of looking good again. I don't want to get my hopes up with anything, but if Yoel goes up to light heavyweight, I think things start to get more interesting. I would like to see the light heavyweight division kind of get back to where it was, because at one point that's where all the killers were at light heavyweight, and now like the past couple years it's just kind of been this weird, I don't know, there's like a few really, really good fighters, and then after that, it's just a bunch of average fighters, in my opinion. But I hope things do kind of get restored with the light heavyweight division. I think a lot of us would like to see that. Obviously, with John Jones coming back, that'll be big. That'll be good for the light heavyweight division. And maybe John Jones moves up to heavyweight, try to win a belt up there. That'd be interesting. I think it'd be a great move for him in terms of legacy and money. You'd probably make a lot of money off that. And if he were to fight DC after DC has his fight with Derek Lewis tomorrow, maybe he could fight John Jones early next year, like February, March, something like that. I think I'm pretty sure DC said that his date that he's for sure going to retire is in April, so it'd have to probably be sometime like March or February of next year. But that'd be an interesting fight, or if that doesn't happen, DC and Brock would happen, something like that. But either way, there's going to be we're set up so far for the end of this year and the beginning of next year. We're set up for some good fights, or at least we're hoping for some good fights for next year, for the beginning of next year. But the end of this year, for closing out this year, we are looking forward to some great fights. Obviously, you have Gustafsson, John Jones. You have Shevchenko, Joanna, Ortega, Holloway. Obviously, you have the card tomorrow. There's some good fights. BJ Penn's coming back in December too. I know he's fighting on the prelims. I'm not exactly sure who he's fighting, but BJ Penn is coming back. So there are some fights to look out for closing out the year, and hopefully the start of next year will be just as good with fights like I mentioned with John Jones, DC possibly, or DC and Brock Lesnar, stuff like that. But yeah, that's honestly pretty much it. Actually, I forgot one thing. I forgot the Cormier and Lewis fight. Who am I gonna pick to win the Cormier Lewis fight? I don't know, because I feel like 9 times out of 10 DC wins that fight, just based off pure skill and the fact that DC's been there before. And I know Derek Lewis was a champion in the promotion. It wasn't Bellator, but the other promotion he was in. He was the heavyweight champ in that, and he was undefeated. So I mean, Lewis has been a champion, but he's not been on this stage or at this high of a level, or this stage, fighting for a UFC championship at Madison Square Garden. So maybe the nerves get to him. I don't know. He seems like a pretty composed guy, though. I feel like he's pretty laid back. He's pretty composed. 9 times out of 10, I say DC wins this fight. But for me, I have this weird gut feeling that Derek Lewis is going to knock him out. There's always that puncher's chance, and especially at heavyweight. You never know what's going to happen in a heavyweight fight, that's why it's crazy that Stipe Miocic defended his title however many times he did it, 4 or 5 times. I don't know that number off the top of my head, and I apologize. But it's a really low number, which I guess 4 or 5 times it's not that low of a number, but for heavyweight, that's insane, because people get knocked out all the time at heavyweight. Those guys are so strong, so big. Anything can happen, and that's why I feel like I have this weird gut feeling that Derek Lewis could knock out Daniel Cormier. But you never know. Like I said, 9 times out of 10, Cormier wins this fight. But like I said, this weird gut feeling tells me that Lewis is going to knock him out. So if I have to make a pick and my money's on it, I'm going to go with Cormier. But in my heart, I feel like Lewis is going to knock him out. And I love DC, and I love Derek Lewis. I love DC. But I just have this weird feeling that Derek Lewis is going to knock him out. I could be wrong, and I very well could be wrong. Like I said, if I put money on it, I'm going to pick Cormier. But I don't know. I just have this weird feeling that Derek Lewis is going to knock him out. But we'll see. We'll see tomorrow. It should be exciting. It's going to be – we're set for a good night of fights. But, yeah, that's pretty much going to wrap up this episode. It's kind of short. I think this one's around 20 minutes. It's a little difficult to talk for a long period of time, especially when I'm the only one just talking to a camera. That's why I want to try to get people on here. Hopefully I'll be getting people on here within the next episode or next few episodes. I'm hoping to get people on here. I want to get people on here, and I feel like the podcast will be a lot longer. I feel like you guys will enjoy a lot longer of a podcast. It'll be a better conversation than me going back and forth with someone. It's easier. It's definitely going to be a lot easier to talk with someone and be able to carry on the podcast longer because I have someone to feed off of and go back and forth with. So I'm working on that. Like I said, I think one of the next people I have 2 people in mind, but one of the next people I'm going to be having on here is probably one of my buddies. He's a streamer, streams on Twitch full time. I feel like that'll be a good, interesting conversation. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We might talk about MMA. We might talk about video games. We might talk about whatever. It should be interesting. But like I said, if you guys have any ideas or anything you guys want me to implement in the podcast, any suggestions you guys have for me to improve the quality or make things better for you guys, please let me know in the comments down in the description or the bottom of this YouTube video. And go ahead and check out the podcast now on iTunes at The White Belt.